Welcome to week 4 of Introduction to Psychology. This week we will be talking about motivation and why we do what we do. Models of motivation indicate that motivation follows a predictable cycle, which typically begins with a need, which is driven by an internal deficiency or something that we need internally. That need causes a drive. A drive is an energized motivational state. So the energy and motivation to pursue a goal, really. And that drive activates a response. So a response is an action or a series of actions which drive us towards our goal. And the goal is the target of the motivated behavior. Achieving the goal satisfies the need. And once that need arises again, then the cycle begins again and cycles through need, drive, response, goal, and need reduction. Individual motivation is related to several motivational factors or areas, including biological motives, stimulus motives, and learned motives. Biological motives include the body's need or desire to maintain homeostasis. And homeostasis is a steady state of body equilibrium. So in other words, to keep things the same, including body temperature, chemicals in the blood, and blood pressure. And so when there is differences from in these areas, such as body temperature, your body is, there's a need to raise your body temperature, for example, and so your body in response has a response that maybe that you shiver, for example, or that you feel motivated to get up and move around, or to find a warm source of heat, such as a fire. Biological needs and drives are impacted by our circadian rhythm, and our circadian rhythm is the changes in body functions and drives that vary on a schedule of approximately 24 hours a day. So a great example of a drive or a need that is driven by our circadian rhythm is sleep. So by and large, folks want to sleep in the evening and wake up in the morning in relationship to the course of the day. When these are disrupted, so if somebody works night shift or travels far distances, their circadian rhythm will be disrupted, and that's how often you'll hear people refer to jet lag and having a hard time getting back on a schedule. Other biological motives include things such as hunger, thirst, pain, and sex. So hunger is a biological drive to eat driven by both biological motives, which are nutrients in the blood, so not having enough nutrients will drive us to want to eat, and external social and environmental factors. And the social and environmental factors tend to be things like taste. So sometimes we eat because we're motivated by something tasting good, or emotional eating. Maybe we eat because we're upset, or culture. Maybe we are prone to eat to celebrate. These are all examples of non-biological motives that impact something that is primarily biologically driven, which is hunger. Thirst is a biological drive to drink that's driven by water lost to the cells or from the tissues surrounding the cells. And that will, in return, create a drive to drink and a response to get a drink. And as a result, the need will be reduced by drinking fluids. Pain is a biological drive to avoid or eliminate bodily damage. So we're all pre-programmed to try to avoid pain and to eliminate it when it does occur. And then the sex drive is also a biological need to engage in sexual behavior and ultimately reproduce. In addition to physical homeostasis, individuals also have a need for arousal homeostasis. And arousal homeostasis is a steady state of nervous system activation, referred to as arousal. So how excited someone and how excited their system is. Low arousal is associated with things like sleep and boredom. High arousal is associated with things like excitement, anxiety, and at the very extremes, panic. Individuals have individual preferred levels of arousal, although there is a general pattern. And there are particular people who are referred to as sensation seekers, who are people who prefer high levels of arousal. So they like to live in a space where they're highly aroused, and they'll seek out activities and experiences that keep them in that higher level of arousal more full time. Most people, despite there being some variation, most people have a similar optimal arousal level. We know that moderate arousal is associated with best performance, and that both low and high arousal is associated with decreased performance. So an example might be you have a test coming up and you have very low arousal associated with the upcoming test, which will likely result in you not preparing very well for the test. So you put it off, you're not very motivated, you don't engage in it very well. And so that lack of arousal is really not serving you because it doesn't feed your desire and your need and your response to prepare for the test. On the other side of it, having a very high arousal associated with the test, which we would often refer to as test anxiety, may make studying for the test less productive. So although you might engage a lot in the studying, you might remember less and feel less prepared as a result. One other class of motivational factors are learned motives. So motivational factors that we've learned and we've been exposed to through experience. So one underlying theory that explains how learned factors work to motivate us is the opponent process theory. So the opponent process theory says that if a stimulus causes a strong emotion, such as fear or pleasure, that when that stimulus ends or is removed, that the opposite feeling is likely to occur. So for example, if you're in a lot of pain and the pain ends, you won't necessarily just feel just an absence of pain, but might actually feel pleasure as a result of that pain being removed. This is really the underlying reason that researchers believe that drug addiction is so powerful, because when individuals use drugs that cause pleasurable sensations and that drug is removed, they're not just not receiving the pleasurable sensation, that pleasurable sensation will be replaced with discomfort, which then makes it much harder for the individual to resist going back to the drug. Social motives are motivational factors that we learn through socialization and cultural conditioning. So they're the motivational factors that our families and our communities and our culture tell us are very important and that we should strive for them. So in America, for example, things that are emphasized and taught from very early in childhood are a drive for success and achievement, competition, money, possessions, status, power, etc. So these, although not completely American only, are very central to the American identity and are taught pretty thoroughly and throughout our culture to children as they grow up. And although there's a tendency for the cultures to have kind of shared social motives, there are differences within individuals within every culture, as expected. And so different individuals will have different levels of social drives. So in America, particularly related to things like achievement and power. So everyone can think of somebody who is very motivated by power and being in charge and spends a lot of time and energy trying to get into positions and seek power. And other people who live in our communities and our society who are really not seeking power at all and actually shy away from it. So there are individual differences, but by and large, social motives are dictated by cultural conditioning and by the culture and communities that we live in. One area that is a possible social motive is called grit, and grit is the tendency to persist despite challenges. And so emphasizing and teaching individuals to value the idea of persisting and that there's value in persistence in itself will help them to achieve all of their other goals. And so every failure is seen as just another step on the pathway of the learning process. And what's really amazing about grit is that grit is the most predictive factor in human success across many, many, many areas. Has been studied very in depth. And is way more predictive than individual talent. So learning to value and to pursue being gritty, to pursue the persistence of a challenge, and not just the end result, can really be impactful in helping individuals achieve their goals. Thank you for reviewing this quick presentation on motivation and motivational factors. I hope it leaves you more motivated to learn about motivation and to read your chapter this week for much more detail and information. If you have any questions or want to discuss further, please see my contact information below, and I'd be happy to talk with you. Talk to you soon.